Hey, welcome. I don't think you clicked on this video by accident. You didn't land here because you were bored or just scrolling. No, something deeper in you, something beyond logic, brought you to this moment. That's how divine timing works. It doesn't wait for your mind to make sense of it, it just shows up. Like a letter finally reaching the right address after passing through 1,000 wrong hands. Let's not sugarcoat it, you've been through a lot. Not just the surface stuff, not the kind of problems people easily understand. No, I'm talking about the kind of life tests that don't come with instructions. The kind you can't prepare for, because they don't ask questions. They are the question. And for a long time, it felt like the answer was always just out of reach. You didn't get a manual. You didn't get a lifeline. Just pressure. Silence. And this strange, unshakable feeling that something, or someone, was watching to see how you'd respond when absolutely nothing made sense. But here's the thing. You didn't just get through it. You passed. Quietly. Without applause. Without shortcuts. And without losing yourself. See, this wasn't some dramatic, visible trial where everyone knew what was at stake. It was private. Lonely. Unrelenting. And still, you showed up for life, even on the days when life didn't show up for you, and that's where most people give up. Not because they're weak, but because the silence can feel like abandonment. But you didn't give in. Let me ask you something. How many mornings did you wake up feeling like your name had been erased from every miracle list in heaven? How many times did you go through your day carrying the weight of prayers that felt unanswered, dreams that felt denied, like a heavy coat you couldn't take off, and still you smiled? Not because everything was fine, but because quitting just didn't feel right either. You've walked into rooms where nobody had a clue you were falling apart inside. You answered messages you didn't have the energy to read. You held your dignity together while life was clawing at your sanity. That's not just strength. That's sacred endurance, and what made it harder was how invisible it all was. No one saw the test. No one noticed the delays that made no sense. The losses that slipped by without sympathy. The internal battles that left no bruises, but bruised everything inside you. That's the thing about spiritual exams, they're silent. And yet the whole universe is watching. You cried out to God, why is this happening to me? But the heavens stayed quiet. Not because you were rejected. But because you were being observed. Think about it, during an exam, the teacher stays silent too. God wasn't gone. He was grading. He was measuring the real you, who you are when there's no audience, no cheering, no visible reward. Only a whisper, a flicker of hope that maybe this isn't the end of your story, and that's what makes you chosen. Not because you avoided pain, but because you let it refine you, without letting it turn you cold. Because you didn't let life corner you into cruelty. Because even when kindness felt pointless, you stayed kind. And let's not overlook the integrity it took. You didn't manipulate. You didn't betray your own soul just to survive. You didn't rush the process, even when the waiting felt like punishment. You passed the test, not through perfection, but through presence. You kept showing up. Even when you didn't recognize your own reflection anymore. You stayed grounded, even when everything around you looked barren. People didn't see the fire, but you walked through it anyway, and now, you carry something. Something quiet but powerful. A kind of spiritual gravity. A presence that can shift the energy in a room. It's not pride, it's earned power. The kind that only comes from passing the hardest exam in complete silence. And now, something is shifting. Maybe the world around you still feels quiet. But this silence? It's different now. It's not the silence that tests your faith. It's the kind that comes right before revelation. You've crossed into something new. Not everyone sees it. Not everyone needs to. But heaven saw your paper, and it was marked with favor. You see, most people look for progress in obvious places, in promotions, paychecks, praise. But divine promotion? That happens in secret. In closed-door conversations where your name is mentioned. In the hearts of people who felt your strength, even when they couldn't explain it. You didn't climb a ladder. You became one, because when you pass a divine exam, you don't just get a reward, you become the proof. The living evidence of what quiet obedience in the dark can create. You are what faith looks like when it refuses to fold, and now that quiet faith. It's beginning to speak. You don't need to explain it. People can already feel the shift. They may not know why, but something about you feels different, stronger, more centered. Like someone who knows, but let's be real, you didn't always feel this way. There were days you wondered if you were just making it all up. If maybe the signs you thought you saw were just imagination. If maybe this calling was just a fantasy you used to cope. There were nights you laid there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like your room was too small for your potential, and too heavy with pressure to breathe, and still, you kept breathing, and now. That very breath, the one you almost lost in the exhaustion, is the air that's making room for your next chapter. There's a new kind of strength forming in you now. But it's not the kind that tightens its fists or braces for impact. No, this strength feels lighter. Like peace after a long storm. Like knowing you don't have to fight everything anymore. You've stopped begging the storm to go away. And instead, you've started learning how to dance in the rain, and that's a shift that changes everything. You're no longer asking, why me? Because somewhere along the way, you began to understand. It wasn't punishment. It was trust. God doesn't hand heavy paths to fragile souls. He gives weight to the ones who can carry it. And yes, it hurt. Yes, it felt unfair at times. But maybe it wasn't cruelty. Maybe it was divine confidence in disguise. A quiet vote of faith that you'd rise without needing to be rescued. See, the test was never really about what you could gain. It was about what you could carry, without breaking your spirit. Without turning bitter. Without losing your heart, and now. Something sacred is unfolding. You don't have to chase it. It's not running away from you. In fact, it's walking toward you now, steady, sure, unmistakable. Like a sunrise. It doesn't need a spotlight or a soundtrack to change everything, it just rises. And the world shifts, that's what's happening to you. You've been promoted, in silence. And with that promotion comes a different kind of responsibility. This is the point where the chosen become leaders, not leaders with titles or followers or microphones. But leaders by presence. By energy. By how you move through the world, you carry something now, a frequency. A vibration, that speaks before you do. You walk into rooms and the atmosphere changes, even if people don't know why. That's not ego. That's earned. That's spiritual authority. And it's rare, but maybe the most beautiful part of it all, you're not just called to rise. You're also called to reach back, because now, you know what it's like to be on the edge. To be holding it all together with nothing but hope. To be doing everything right, and still feel forgotten. You get it. And that understanding? That's a gift. It gives you eyes that see beyond the surface. It gives you words that heal without trying, it gives you compassion that breathes life into someone else who's drowning silently, just like you once were. You don't need a stage to teach. You don't need a crowd to lead. Your life is already speaking. Every scar. Every silent night. Every whispered yes in the dark, they've all become a lighthouse. A signal someone else can follow. You're no longer the one being tested. You're now the one trusted. So don't shrink yourself just because the fire wasn't public. Don't downplay what you survived because others didn't see it. The fire wasn't meant for them. It was meant to reveal you, and you. You showed up with grace, with grit. With patience, and with presence. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. You earned this next chapter, not with noise, but with nobility, and now, it begins. The things that used to confuse you, they're about to start making sense. The delays that once made you feel forgotten, they're not late anymore. They're arriving, not as rewards, but as reflections. Reflections of who you've become. Of what you've proven. Of what you're here to do, because let's be clear, you didn't get here by chance. You didn't just stumble into purpose. You were forged into it. Through silence. Through storms. Through seasons where you didn't even recognize yourself, and still chose not to give up. That's what being chosen looks like. It's not about escaping pain. It's about transforming through it. You didn't cheat. You didn't cut corners. You didn't sacrifice your character just to reach a finish line. You waited when waiting hurt. You stayed grounded when your roots felt dry. You stayed loving when bitterness would have been easier, and now. Now, you've become the evidence, the living proof of what divine timing, deep surrender, and quiet endurance can produce. So don't be surprised if people start responding to you differently. Don't be surprised if you feel heavier, not in burden, but in weight. The kind of spiritual weight that can only come from walking through invisible fire and coming out more true, not less. And you know what's interesting, people might not even realize why they feel drawn to you now. Why they feel calmer around you. Why they trust you without knowing your story, but you know, it's because the test you passed left something behind. A residue of resilience. A calm that can't be faked. A depth that can't be taught. You're not just walking into your next season, you're walking into it prepared, not perfect. Not painless. But ready, and with that readiness comes alignment. Doors will start to open, not because you forced them, but because you've become the person who belongs on the other side. People will start to find you, not because you chased them, but because your energy speaks to theirs. Your presence carries the code they've been searching for. You've become a mirror for what's possible, and maybe. That's the whole point. You weren't meant to just survive the test. You were meant to embody the result, so when others look at you, they don't just see survival. They see what it means to be whole. To be rooted. To be real. That's what leadership looks like in this season, not louder. But deeper. Not bigger, but truer, so walk in it. Don't question it. Don't explain it, let your life speak now.